Have you ever felt strangely distant from the world, even when surrounded by people? Not lonely, exactly, just separate, as if your mind lives in a different rhythm than everyone else's? You observe more than you speak. You feel deeply, but reveal little. Conversations often feel shallow, while your inner world feels endlessly alive. Society tells you something is wrong with this distance. But Carl Jung would argue the opposite. Sometimes disconnection is not a defect. It is a sign of a rare psychological orientation. A mind tuned inward, sensitive to meaning, pattern, and depth. If you feel disconnected from others, you may not be broken. You may simply be built differently. When someone lives primarily in the inner world, it does not mean they reject life or withdraw from reality out of fear. It means their attention naturally moves toward images, thoughts, emotions, and patterns that arise from within. The outer world provides stimulation, of course, but it is not where meaning is generated for them. Meaning is discovered inwardly, through reflection, imagination, and quiet observation. Such a person may sit in a room full of conversation and feel more alive contemplating a single sentence than participating in 20 exchanges. This is not indifference toward people. It is a different way of orienting consciousness. You see, the psyche does not distribute energy equally in every direction. Some minds move outward, gathering experience through action, noise, and social engagement. Other minds turn inward, where symbols form, where memories speak, where intuition arranges fragments into understanding. The inward-oriented person often notices connections long before they can explain them. They sense a mood in a room, a tension in a voice, a hidden contradiction in an idea. They may struggle to translate this into ordinary language, which can create the impression of distance or reserve. But inwardly, they are deeply engaged with life, often more intensely than those who speak easily. This inward richness can feel isolating in a culture that celebrates visibility, speed, and constant expression. When value is measured by how loudly one participates, the quiet observer may seem invisible, even to themselves at times. They may wonder whether something is missing in them, whether their preference for solitude or silence signals weakness or social failure. Yet this tendency is not a defect of character. It is a natural configuration of the psyche. Every civilization has depended on such minds to bring depth, insight, and continuity of meaning, even if they rarely stand at the center of attention. There is also a certain responsibility that comes with this inward orientation. One must learn to give form to what lives inside, otherwise the inner world becomes closed, stagnant, or overwhelming. Reflection must eventually meet expression, even if gently, even if imperfectly. When this balance is found, the person no longer feels imprisoned by their inwardness. They become a bridge between unseen understanding and lived reality. And perhaps this is the quiet truth. Your distance from the noise of the world may not be separation at all, but a deeper way of listening to life itself. There are individuals who seem to hear a second conversation unfolding beneath the ordinary one. While words are exchanged politely on the surface, they sense the emotional current underneath, the hesitation behind a smile, the quiet resistance inside agreement, the unspoken longing hidden in casual remarks. This is not mysticism. It is a refined psychological sensitivity. The unconscious constantly communicates through tone, posture, rhythm, silence, and contradiction. Most people move too quickly to notice it. But some minds naturally attend to these subtle signals, as though their awareness were tuned to a deeper frequency of human behavior. Such sensitivity often develops early, sometimes as a way of adapting to complex emotional environments, sometimes simply as a native disposition of the psyche. Over time, the person learns to read atmospheres rather than statements, motives rather than explanations. They may enter a room and immediately feel whether something is unsettled, even when no one speaks of it. This awareness can be difficult to justify rationally, which creates a quiet tension inside them. They know something is present, yet language arrives late. Others may dismiss their impressions as imagination or overthinking, further reinforcing a sense of standing apart. This capacity to perceive what remains hidden carries both insight and burden. When you see beneath appearances, you are less easily comforted by social illusions. You notice where people betray themselves, where fear shapes behavior, where unresolved conflict silently directs choices. This can make ordinary interaction feel strangely thin, almost theatrical. Not because you lack empathy, but because you sense how much remains unspoken. You may find yourself listening more than speaking, observing patterns rather than reacting to them. Over time, this inward attentiveness can create emotional fatigue, as the psyche continuously absorbs more information than it expresses. Yet this sensitivity is not meant to isolate. It invites responsibility. To perceive deeply without becoming hardened or withdrawn requires conscious cultivation of compassion and discernment. One must learn when to hold insight quietly and when to offer it gently. Not every truth needs immediate exposure. Psychological maturity lies in timing and restraint as much as in clarity. When this inner listening is honored rather than suppressed, it becomes a form of wisdom rather than alienation. You begin to trust your perception without allowing it to dominate you. You no longer feel burdened by what others overlook. Instead, you understand that every mind carries its own range of awareness. And in that realization, separation softens into quiet acceptance. The deeper you learn to listen beneath the surface, the more faithfully you learn to listen to yourself. Many people who feel disconnected are not withdrawing from life itself, but from a particular kind of life, one built on surfaces, roles, and constant performance. They move through social systems that reward appearance over substance, speed over reflection, agreement over authenticity. In such environments, something in them quietly resists. Not through rebellion or arrogance, but through a subtle refusal to live only on the outer layer of existence. They sense that much of what passes for connection is imitation rather than encounter. And this creates an inner distance they often cannot easily explain. Every society develops a shared mask, a way of behaving that allows individuals to belong and function smoothly. I called this the persona. It is necessary, yet dangerous when mistaken for the whole of the self. When a person identifies too completely with this mask, they lose contact with their inner reality. Those who feel discomfort in shallow social structures are often reacting to this danger instinctively. They feel the tension between what is being displayed and what is being lived inwardly. Conversations centered only on status, image, distraction, or competition leave them strangely empty, not because such topics are immoral, but because they do not touch the deeper layers of the psyche. This resistance can make ordinary participation feel exhausting. One may attend gatherings, fulfill roles, smile politely, yet leave feeling diminished rather than enriched. The psyche longs for genuine exchange, moments where thought, vulnerability, curiosity, and meaning are allowed to surface. When these are rare, the individual may begin to withdraw, not out of contempt for others, but as a way of protecting their inner coherence. Solitude becomes a refuge from fragmentation. Of course, this position carries its own risks. If one rejects the collective too completely, isolation hardens into superiority or detachment. The task is not to escape society, but to remain inwardly honest while moving through it consciously. One must learn to wear the mask without becoming it, to participate without surrendering the soul. When this balance develops, the person no longer feels crushed by shallow systems, nor enslaved by them. They understand that the outer world operates by its own rules, while the inner world demands fidelity to truth. Holding both realities without confusion is a mark of psychological maturity. Perhaps this is the quiet courage required today, to remain authentic in a world that constantly invites you to become a performance. There is a deep difference between wanting to belong and wanting to understand. Most people move through life guided by the instinct to fit into a group, to feel protected by shared opinions, customs, and identities. This instinct is natural and necessary. Human beings are social creatures, and the need for connection protects us from isolation and chaos. Yet there are some individuals for whom belonging is not the highest inner demand. Their psyche presses instead toward meaning, coherence, and inner alignment. They are less concerned with where they stand socially than with whether their life feels inwardly true. Such people often begin asking questions earlier than others. Why do we believe what we believe? Why do we live the way we do? What governs our choices when no one is watching? These are not abstract games of the intellect, but expressions of a deep psychological necessity. The mind seeks orientation, not merely acceptance. When answers offered by society feel borrowed rather than lived, The individual senses a quiet falseness and cannot rest comfortably within it. They may appear independent, sometimes even stubborn, but inwardly, they are simply trying to remain faithful to their own experience. This orientation toward meaning naturally creates distance. When group consensus dominates conversation, the inwardly guided person may feel unseen or misplaced. They are not easily satisfied by slogans, trends, or inherited opinions. Their thinking matures slowly, shaped by reflection rather than imitation. This can feel lonely, especially in environments that reward conformity. Yet this solitude carries creative potential. It allows the individual to discover a personal relationship with values, rather than adopting them unconsciously. Of course, the danger lies in mistaking inner certainty for absolute truth. Psychological growth demands humility. One must remain open to correction, dialogue, and contradiction, even while honoring one's inner compass. Meaning does not arise from isolation alone, but from the ongoing conversation between inner experience and outer reality. When this balance is cultivated, independence becomes wisdom rather than rigidity. Those who walk this path may never fully dissolve into the crowd, nor should they wish to. Their task is not to disappear into collective identity, but to contribute clarity, depth, and perspective back into the human field. They become quiet carriers of insight, often shaping culture indirectly rather than through dominance or noise. And perhaps this is the hidden calling of such a psyche. Not to belong blindly, but to understand deeply, and in doing so, help others remember what it means to live consciously. Many people who carry a rich inner life also carry their emotional depth quietly. On the surface, they may appear composed, restrained, even slightly distant, yet inwardly, feeling moves with great intensity. Thoughts, memories, hopes, disappointments, and longings form a complex inner landscape that few ever witness. This contrast between outer calm and inner movement can easily create misunderstanding. Others may assume there is little happening inside when in truth the psyche is constantly alive with reflection and emotional nuance. Such individuals often learned early that inner experience is private, sometimes even sacred. Not everything seeks immediate expression. Some emotions need time to mature before they can be spoken honestly. There is a natural instinct here to protect what is still forming, yet this inward containment can also become a source of quiet loneliness. When no one sees the depth you live with, a subtle feeling of invisibility may emerge. Even in close relationships, one may feel emotionally present, yet strangely unknown. This hidden intensity can also produce moments of sudden overwhelm. When feeling accumulates without outward movement, it seeks release in dreams, imagination, creative work, or sudden emotional waves. The psyche does not tolerate permanent suppression, requires circulation. If expression is denied too long, tension grows, sometimes appearing as fatigue, irritability, or a vague sense of inner pressure that cannot easily be explained. Learning to give gentle form to inner emotion becomes essential for psychological balance. At the same time, this inward emotional richness carries great sensitivity. Such people often feel deeply moved by beauty, suffering, ideas, and symbolic meaning. They resonate strongly with music, art, nature, and intimate conversation. Their empathy is often quiet rather than dramatic. They sense emotional shifts in others even when nothing is spoken. Sensitivity can make the world feel overwhelming at times, yet it also allows for genuine understanding and compassion when integrated consciously. The task here is not to become louder or more expressive simply to fit social expectations, but to develop honest channels of communication with oneself and with trusted others. Emotional maturity arises when inner life is respected without becoming sealed away. The goal is circulation, not exhibition, connection, not exposure. When this balance is found, the individual no longer feels divided between inner depth and outer presence. They begin to inhabit both worlds with greater ease and authenticity. And perhaps this is the quiet strength of such a psyche, to feel deeply without being ruled by feeling, and to remain inwardly alive while standing calmly in the world. For certain individuals, solitude is not an absence of life, but a return to it. When the noise of the world softens, something essential becomes audible inside. Thoughts settle into clearer patterns, emotions reveal their true shape, and intuition regains its natural voice. This is not withdrawal in the pathological sense. This is a psychological need to reconnect with the inner center, the place where one is not performing, explaining, or adapting. In solitude, the personality reorganizes itself. What was scattered begins to integrate. I have often observed that the psyche heals and matures most effectively when given space. Constant stimulation keeps the mind reacting rather than understanding. When a person never meets themselves in silence, unresolved material accumulates beneath awareness. Solitude allows these contents to surface gently. Memories, dreams, questions, creative impulses. This encounter is not always comfortable. One meets contradictions, fears, and longings that society rarely encourages us to face. Yet this encounter is precisely what fosters psychological growth. Without it, the individual remains shaped largely by outer expectations rather than inner truth. Those who feel naturally drawn to being alone often sense this necessity intuitively. They are not escaping people. They are seeking alignment. They require periods of quiet in order to digest experience and restore balance. After deep social exposure, their nervous system asks for retreat, much like the body requires rest after exertion. When this need is ignored, irritability, confusion, or emotional dullness can appear. The psyche signals its limits. However, solitude must not become isolation. If inward exploration loses contact with living relationships and responsibility, it risks becoming sterile or self-absorbed. The purpose of inner work is not separation from humanity, but deeper participation in it. One returns from solitude with clearer perception, greater compassion, and stronger integrity. The inward journey renews one's capacity to meet the outer world without fragmentation. This rhythm between retreat and engagement forms the foundation of individuation, the gradual becoming of who one truly is. It is not a dramatic transformation, but a steady alignment between inner reality and outward life. Each return to silence strengthens this alignment, refining judgment, stabilizing emotion, and clarifying direction. When solitude is honored wisely, it ceases to feel like loneliness and becomes a source of quiet strength. One no longer depends entirely on external validation or constant stimulation to feel whole. And perhaps this is the deeper gift of aloneness. It teaches you how to stand firmly in yourself, so you can meet the world without losing your soul.